Graham Jason Matthews here with WrestleRant, ahead of MLW Fightland, coming up this Saturday, September 14th. Today we're talking one of the newest members of the MLW roster, Dijak, Donovan Dijak, headed to MLW as of a couple weeks ago, debuting at Summer of the Beast just less than 2 weeks ago. You're making your in-ring debut for the promotion against Timothy Thatcher on Saturday, Donovan. What's going on, dude? Thanks for taking the time.
I am having a great day. How about you?
Doing great, man. The last couple of months have been quite the whirlwind for you. Obviously, popping up in all these different promotions. MLW, no different. Most obvious question everyone's wondering right now, everyone's asking it, why MLW? Why is this the best fit right now for Donovan Dijak?
Um, a lot has to do with timing and vision, right?
Hmm.
So both of those things are extremely important to me at this point in my career. I haven't been shy about letting everyone know I'm 37 years old. So, some some people hear that and they go, "Oh, he's 40," and
Hmm.
that's he's over the hill, you know. Not how I envision it. I'm seeing a lot of wrestlers in their 40s and mid 40s and even their 50s having a ton of success right now. Um, that being said, for me and my style and the way that I wrestle and the way that I like to present, I'm aware that I'm probably closer to the end of my maybe not the end of my career, but
Hmm.
end of my let's call it a high octane in-ring style than the
Hmm.
beginning, right? I started when I was 25. I'm 37 now. So by the time I'm 45, I'm probably not going to be wrestling the same matches that I'm wrestling right now. That being said, I'm in the prime of my career in ring and as a character and as a performer, just as the total package. So I'm very confident in myself from that aspect. Um, that being said, so the timing aspect is very important to me in terms of
Hmm.
MLW and how they approached me and the format that they presented to me. And then alongside that went with vision, which is the acknowledgement and their ideas and how they collaborate with mine. And that's extremely important to me, right?
Hmm.
Because I was in the WWE system for a long time, and a big piece of my time in the WWE system was, hey, here's our thoughts for you. Here's what we'd like you to do, and go do it to the best of your ability. And that I'm in acting training right now, and I've been training with Howard Fine out of Los Angeles, who's one of the best actor trainers in the world.
Hmm.
Um, and a big piece of acting training is, hey, they give you the script and you need to emotionally invest and make it your own. You
Hmm.
need to become that character. So that's always how I've approached those pieces of it. That being said, there's a big piece of this puzzle as a professional wrestler in terms of you're also the producer and the director and the writer, and you want to be that thing because you want your vision to collaborate all together as the total package, right? A lot of the best movies that people see is because it's like a Quentin Tarantino movie where he's the
Yeah.
writer, the producer, because he has this vision and he
Hmm.
wants all the pieces to match up. With this current rendition of this character, which began in NXT, but now you're seeing the full fleshed out sort of in-ring promo and vignette and presentation and mindset and the things that I'm saying and the way that I'm acting and talking. Now the whole vision is coming to presentation, and MLW wanted to dive headfirst into that, and that's speaking my language at this point in my career. So those two pieces of it really presented themselves in a very appealing light to me at the correct time in my career and life. So
Hmm.
so I'm 100% diving headfirst into everything with MLW, and it's a very exciting time.
Yeah, man. Just hearing you talk about that, it's such like a unique way of like looking at things, like wrestling wise, just at life in general, but specifically with the business. When I feel like a lot of people don't really approach things that way, especially nowadays on the independent scene. With social media, you kind of control your own, character, vignette, vision, like you said. And we've been seeing with that with you for a while now. You mentioned how it started in NXT. We're seeing it still now. Your name pops up on the big screen at Summer of the Beast, and people go nuts because this is essentially, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. Is this the same Donovan Dijak? Obviously, the Donovan's back in your name. You're not just Dijak anymore. A lot of different names over the years. Is
Yeah.
this essentially the same Dijak from a couple of months ago that we were seeing on NXT and obviously across all these independent promotions? Is this very much a different Dijak from what we've been getting? Obviously, you're out there killing it the same way that you were even just 6 months ago. Or is this a different Dijak that we're seeing right now?
Um, two-pronged answer. In a way, yes, and in a way, no,
Okay.
right? Um, what I was giving you, especially towards the end of my run in NXT, was as much of my vision as I could a appropriately get across within the confines of a WWE televised product,
Sure.
which is, it has a lot of constraints. And I don't hold that against them, right? That they know that they have a lot of constraints, and it's not their job to present Dijak. It's their job to present NXT, the WWE product as a
Sure.
brand.
Yeah.
So I get that. And I get that I'm a piece of a much bigger puzzle, right? So I'm not going to get the full vision. I'm not going to get all the verbiage that I want. I'm not going to be able to do all the moves that I want, all the match time, all the match length. That being said, I was given a lot of leeway in NXT that I didn't get at other points in my WWE career. I'm super thankful for that. A lot of that was my vision and a collaboration between a lot of creative minds. I'm super thankful for all of it.
Hmm.
That being said, it wasn't my full vision, right? Obviously. Um, in WWE, you almost never get someone's full vision, right?
Yeah.
Maybe Roman, that's his full vision, and like CM Punk, right? The guys who they just go to and they're like, "Hey, do whatever you want," right?
Sure.
Like,
Yeah.
you're the king of the world, so you do, The Rock, right? You own the company, do whatever you want. Um, so, uh, so kudos to them. I always wanted to be a top guy in WWE, and I was very vocal about that. Um, for better or for worse. Maybe they didn't like that I felt that way. I don't know. I never got feedback on that, and that's okay. I don't
Hmm.
I don't hold that against anyone. And I'm not angry about a business decision, right? A business decision is a business decision. What I am excited about is the business decision that MLW's made with me, and I feel like I can finally present that full vision and that full product with all the bells and whistles that I have in my brain, and lay it out to how I always envisioned this presentation of myself going. And it has a deep vested interest in my writing and my creative process and the way that I see the motivation of this character and how he interacts with different people. And that is just exactly what I want as a fully enveloped character. So that's sort of how I'm approaching this process and how I feel creatively about it, if that answers your question.
No, that makes sense. Absolutely. And especially since just seeing your evolution in the last like 7, 10 plus years that people have been following your career, because it's not just, there's a lot of people that leave WWE and only kind of came up through that system. You spent a lot of time there, obviously, but you had a lot of success even going before, joining WWE 7 years ago, the time in Ring of Honor, the time in the independent scene. I had mentioned when we spoke previously, but in Northeast Wrestling specifically, obviously you just came back. That great match with Casey Navarro was fucking awesome. I
Thank
mean, the time that you carved out to make it to that show. I know, again, we spoke that day, but you had, a
you.
birthday party and you did the match, the opening match, did the match with Casey, and you left right after because I think you were going to England or something like that. Like the
Yeah,
schedule you're working right now is pretty crazy, dude.
yeah, that one was pretty tight. I don't know. I don't know if I should have done it the way that I did, but yeah, the reality of that situation is um that's the tightest one I've ever had in terms of
Really? Wow.
I rolled, we finished the match, I rolled out of the ring. Um I said thank you to everybody, and like literally dripping wet in my gear, got in my car and drove all the way to JFK. And I
Yeah.
didn't even that was a gamble because I knew that like it can be hit or miss with
Hmm.
traffic from Connecticut to New York City. So I looked at the GPS and I'm like, please don't say 3 hours. And it said, an hour and 37 minutes or whatever. So I was like, oh, thank God. And when I got to JFK, I didn't realize how far the rental car return was from whatever terminal I need to get to. I need to get to the train, and then the
Oh,
train
yeah.
8 stops to get there.
Yep.
And I'm looking at my thing, and then finally I get to the TSA line, and there's a huge line there, and I'm like, I don't know if I'm. And this is an international flight, right? I'm going to London, so so compound all of this that if it works, I'm still getting on a plane all sweaty, not
Yeah.
sleep,
Yeah.
the next day in London, I have a show like in the morning. So it's this whole like whirlwind in my brain.
Oh, and the time difference too, and everything.
The
Yeah.
time different, the time jumps dramatically
Hmm.
forward. So, so I make the flight while they're boarding, by the way. My bag clears TSA as they're like calling for the last people to get
Yeah.
on. I'm like, okay, I just made this flight. And then I flew all the way to England in sort of like a daze to go
Yep.
wrestle. I think Michael Oku, who at the time was the Rev Pro world champion. So
Hmm.
again, it was just a blur of like I don't even remember where I was coming from to get to that show, but I know that was a tight window too. Just the whole thing was just a big blur. And I don't think I'm gonna put myself in a lot of situations like that again unless I have.
Yeah. It's a live and learn experience. Yeah.
But yeah, that was a crazy weekend. I'm just so happy with the way the matches came out. Casey's so talented, Michael's so talented. It was a wonderful experience. There are two incredible promotions that I got to work for. Again, I can't remember where I was coming from, but I wish I could so I could put them over too. But the whole experience was wonderful, and I I'm super thankful because it's like, especially on these independent shows, you get to work guys in a setting where they're not so like um what's the terminology? In WWE especially, but
Hmm.
really in any television system, everything comes with this preconceived context of sort of like, is this is this what the boss wants? Am I going to get in trouble for doing this? Am I
Yeah.
going to be praised for this, right? Because that becomes sort of audience number one. And then there's the secondary audience, which is the live crowd, which
Hmm.
sometimes doesn't always match up, right? Like you can get huge responses from the crowd, and then you come back, it's like, that's not really what we told you to do, and that doesn't match up to our vision. And so there's this weird sort of checks and balances system, especially in the television market, that
Hmm.
you don't really get on the independency. On the independency, it's like, yeah, whatever. We got 100 people to work for. Let's give them the best match humanly possible.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you're not worried about like, oh, am I going to take this bump? Am I going to do that? Is the
Yeah.
booker gonna get upset? You just go, let's pop the people as much as we possibly can. That's refreshing to me. It's
Hmm.
super refreshing to me. It's refreshing for me personally to be able to get into that mindset and not have to worry about who am I going to make angry with whatever move I'm doing or whatever, that whole piece.
Yeah.
So it's super refreshing to be able to work like-minded guys like that in relatively free spaces, and I'm super excited and sort of liberated by that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And it's a mindset that you're not unfamiliar with because, like I said, and obviously we discussed your time prior to WWE, you spent a number of years on the independent scene. When you go back to the independent scene, quite quickly too. I mean, your contract expired, you left, and you were like working shows like literally immediately, like that weekend or a week or so later, right? Like within a
Yeah,
couple.
I think legally, again, I never got a clear answer on this. My contract ended on June 28th.
Okay, yeah.
Wasn't sure whether I could work a show on the 28th or not.
You were
That
you thinking about it?
Yes, yes,
Wow.
I was. Nothing quite cropped up, and my wife was on. Uh, she was traveling because
Hmm.
we didn't know any of this was happening 2 weeks before. So she had like travel set up for that day, and she was getting back that Saturday.
Yeah.
That Saturday, when she got back, I said, "Okay, goodbye," and I drove
Wow.
to Blitzkrieg in Enfield, Connecticut, for my
Yep.
first independent appearance. So literally, the second I could, I was. So that's just kind of my mindset and how I
Yeah.
always kind of traverse forward through adversity.
Like with the travel specifically too, because obviously WWE being on the main roster and NXT as well, a lot of travel that's included. But you were doing that before WWE, and you mentioned the close encounter going from Northeast Wrestling with Casey to the Michael match in England and that whole situation. Obviously, like you mentioned, is that
Yep.
something that you have to get used to again with the indie scene, or like you were already doing some of that stuff in WWE? Like I know you've mentioned you didn't have to relocate to Florida for NXT. I know you've said that before, so that's obviously a travel.
Not
Not
not the second time, but the first time I did.
yeah,
And
the first time you were. Yeah, the second
that
time.
was
Yeah.
hard.
Yeah.
That was difficult, right? Because my wife and I had to relocate to Florida, and
Yeah.
she was pregnant with my first child, my son
Wow.
Connor, who's turning 7 in a month, in less than a month. So yeah, it was 7 years ago, but she was pregnant with him, and there was a lot of uncertainty about that contract, and we had to move, and didn't have a lot of money at that point. So that was probably the hardest thing I've ever had to do, just in terms of like life things within the
Hmm.
professional wrestling. But in terms of just strictly travel, right now is the busiest I've ever been
Wow. Yeah.
by by a good amount. Like the travel to for Raw and stuff wasn't, you get used to it because it's kind of for both Raw and my second run in NXT, because it's kind of the same pattern every week.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
I wasn't on a lot of house shows, right? I
Hmm.
was so for me it was mostly like when I was on Raw, it was like leave Sunday night, come back Tuesday morning, leave Sunday night, come back Tuesday morning, and just that was when I worked, and that was it. Um, in terms of travel, NXT very similar. Leave Monday morning, back Wednesday morning, Monday morning, Wednesday morning, Monday morning, Wednesday morning. With an exception, once a month, I think I would stay for the whole week and do a what we called a coconut loop. So I would stay and do a week of training and
Yeah.
train myself, and then help out training the younger kids, because obviously I had more experience than almost everybody in NXT at that
Hmm.
point. So it's kind of a player coach in a sense. Um, so those weeks were kind of tough, but really right now for me, especially from like the physical travel sort of aspect of it, in terms of like on a plane, transfer here, drive here, do all that, this is by far the busiest I've ever been. You know, the like a normal weekend for me, right, would be this weekend that I just had. I only had two bookings. It was Thursday and Saturday.
So some
Thursday,
space between the two, a little bit. Yeah.
yeah, a little bit of space, but sometimes there's not. Like 2 weekends ago, I worked 4 days in a row, and
That's
it's
crazy.
the travel days are just insane. It's like driving, flying here, like this week was fly to Chicago, then fly home, and then spend an afternoon with my kids, and then fly to Spokane, Washington, which isn't the easiest place in the world to get to. It was like Dallas to Spokane, do the
Wow.
show, huge time difference, check into the hotel, check out of the hotel at 3 in the morning,
Jeez.
uh, to Denver yesterday, back to Boston. Boston's not that close to my home, so I got to drive to back to my house, and it's all of that travel just wrapped into a ball. I ended up getting home at like 5 p.m. or something. I spent it reminds me of the old the Triple H Tough Enough promo, where it's like, now you're super dad, you're super mom, that thing. So I got
Yeah.
to hammer out a whole weekend with my kids in like 2 hours,
Yeah.
so that part of it is taxing both mentally and physically. But again, better to be busy than not. You know what? The good, not the good, the great part about this is that I control all of it. It's
Hmm.
not WWE where they call you Christmas night and say, "Hey, we need you at Madison Square Garden the next tomorrow morning." That happened to me.
I was
I
gonna
was
say, did that actually happen?
Yeah,
Wow.
that happened to me. I wrestled Finn Balor in Madison Square Garden on December 26th, I think. Either the 26th or the 27th. I was called, and I think I was called on Christmas Day. And my guess would be, and this isn't the kind of thing, just back to my point, this isn't the kind of thing where you can be like, oh no, I can't make it. It's Christmas, right?
You
This is
do it. Yeah.
it's WWE.
Yeah.
They can, you have to give them 60 to 90 days notice if you want to do anything. They don't have to give you a second's notice. If they need you, they need you. That's it. Me and my tag partner Mace, we had to go to Puerto Rico with like 2 days notice.
Yeah.
Again, I said I didn't have to do a lot of house shows, so I'm thankful that my schedule was not as busy, especially at a time when, if you can put the puzzle pieces together, I had very, very young children throughout most of my WWE run. So I got to see my kids grow up, and I was there to help with the infancy and the baby portion of all. So in that family home life sense, I'm super thankful for that. But now I'm at a point where I don't have to worry about Christmas. I'm taking Christmas off. I don't,
Yeah. Of course.
it's
Yeah.
my own schedule. No one's going to tell me to work on Christmas.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just say, no, I'm not taking that booking. That's refreshing to me, because I can say like my son's birthday party's on a Sunday. I got plenty of offers to work on that Sunday. No, I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
My son's birthday party. I don't, that's to me, I love that. I love that freedom, and I love that piece of it. Again, it's a double-edged sword. There's plenty of things I miss about WWE, right? I haven't had the thrill, and I was talking about this with my buddy Anthony Green, who was a
Oh,
champion.
another Northeast native. Yeah. Of
Yeah,
course.
another he was another champion. He was a champion in Pro Wrestling Noah. He still
Hmm.
works. So he's a big name on
Yeah.
the independent scene, and he was in WWE for a little
Yeah.
bit. But I was talking to him about that, and I'm like, man, there's a big piece of this from the WWE puzzle that I miss, and that's that thrill of being on live television. That's hard to replicate. It's really, and I know a lot of this stuff is streamed online. So that, there's similarities there, but it's hard to replicate that. Like, all right, 3, 2, 1, your music hits, you're live in front of 1.2 million people. That's a thrill that you can't replicate anywhere else. So, double-edged sword, pros and cons, right? I
Yeah.
like positives, but there's also, different aspects of it that you have to acknowledge. And, we'll get back on live TV at some point. I'm not, I've got time. I'm 37, I'm not 87. So
Yeah.
I'll be okay. But right now I like to focus on the positives as much as I can.
Of course. I mean, you mentioned it right there. I mean, this show, not exactly live television, but this show coming up, Fightland, streaming on YouTube, it's still a live streaming show, and it's a different thrill for different things. I mean, you mentioned like even the match with Casey that it was there for, like in front of 100 people. That's not being streamed. I mean, obviously for later footage it is, but it's not live on television. But like you feed off that energy of the audience, and again, you have all these different experiences everywhere that you've been. As we wind down here, how much like when you're in that WWE system,
Mhm.
not even necessarily speaking for other people. I mean, I guess you can if you want, but like for you specifically, how much are you paying attention to like the independency? And I mean, I know it's difficult because obviously you're traveling all the time, you're still managing your family, stuff like that. How much are you like able to pay attention? Not even to like other promotions. I'm just talking like the people that you kind of came up in the business with, before you joined NXT and how it's kind of difficult to balance all of that.
I did for a while, especially throughout my first NXT run.
Hmm.
Mostly through social media. Obviously, I have a very close circle of friends, probably 10 guys within the wrestling business. And at the time, most of them were in WWE with me, but there was a handful outside that I would, they'll send me matches or tell me what show they're on and I'll follow them. But for the most part, it was through social media, through Twitter or Instagram or whoever I happen to be following. Then there was a portion where where I used my social media again because I dive so headfirst into these projects and what's given to me is I felt like when T-Bar and the Retribution thing was coming up, I was like, oh, I'm a anarchist. Like I shouldn't be following anyone on
Yeah, I
Twitter.
remember
So
that.
I
Yeah,
unfollowed everybody, and then I sort of lost touch with what was going on
that's
around. And
crazy.
again, this is right at the beginning of the pandemic, so there wasn't a lot of wrestling happening near.
No, yeah.
So yeah, I sort of zonked out and didn't really see much of anything. Not that there was much of anything going on in 2020. But even after that, 21, 22, I didn't see a ton outside of the stuff that was like personally sent to me. It wasn't until more recently in my later NXT run where I started kind of reassociating myself with everything outside of the
The bubble.
WWE bubble. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's been exciting. It's been good to me to sort of get reacclimated with a lot of those things because a lot of them are places that I'm familiar with, people that I'm familiar with. It's funny to see all it's been 12 years and it's always funny to me how much because the reality of my situation is I never had a run on Raw or SmackDown as myself, right?
Hmm.
I was always either shaved head, masked, red paint face, T-bar,
Yeah.
or I had a very small handful of appearances as T-bar without a mask on. It was just like how I look now, but with a little bit of face paint and
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
And even those were extremely limited. So for the most part, like a widespread audience isn't familiar with me. And I think it's funny that the contrast to that and the dichotomy to that is in a funny way, I've wrestled almost everybody in this business. There's a ton of people I haven't, obviously.
Yeah, sure.
Um, but like I've wrestled like John Cena and Randy Orton, and you just start to list names, and they're all there.
Yeah, man.
And then I flip on AEW, and I'm watching the main event, and I'm like, "Yep, I've wrestled Swerve. Yep, I've wrestled Hangman. Yep, I've wrestled Brian." It's just the list goes on and on. And yep, Prince Nana was my manager, and
Yeah, in
you
a
just
different
the
life.
list.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
like Jesus, I've done all of this, and like the casual fan doesn't even know, and that's
Hmm.
just funny to me. But double-edged sword, right? I wouldn't change any of it for anything, but it's funny to have sort of like these these multiple lives, right? Because I've had so many names and so many
Hmm.
characters and so many different incarnations and different promotions. It's just funny to have all of the sort of hidden sort of experience that I have at this point.
Yeah, man, it's fantastic, especially when you put it together all like that. It's like, man, you really have taken on a lot of people. Like, I've had a lot of experience in a lot of different places, which was well documented, like I said, but all the people you've been able to face across all these different promotions and even through the retribution stuff, for as low as that was for in the fans' eyes and yours eyes, whatever, you got to have a lot of like different matches and wrestle through the Thunderdome
Yeah, I
era.
mean, right. There's pros and cons to everything,
Sure,
right? I
absolutely.
take a lot of shots at Retribution and deservedly
Rightfully
so.
so. Yeah, yeah.
Right, but there's a lot of stuff from that experience that was so invaluable to me, and I've talked at length about this on other podcasts, but
Mhm.
just the experience of working under that pressure and those circumstances, and the guys I was able to work with. I got to wrestle John Cena and Randy Orton, like I mentioned, and just the list of names goes on and on and on. So it's I got to work with Bray Wyatt, right? So I'm not gonna just take it and crumble it and throw it
Yeah.
away and pretend it never happened, right?
Yeah,
There's
yeah.
there's parts of it that I'd like to crumble up and
Of
throw away and
course.
pretend it never
Yeah.
happened. But the whole overall experience, I wouldn't change a second of it because it molded me and gave me the brain and the mind for the business that I have right now, and the experience and the perspective to understand that all of this is subjective, and really nobody has one correct answer. That it's all so fluid that we all have different ideas, and it's a meticulous sort of collaboration amongst all of us in terms of feedback, in terms of opinions, things like that. So
Mhm.
it's all just fun. That's really
Yeah.
what it is.
That's really what it comes down to. And like you said, dude, you still have so many more people left to face. I don't know if you faced
Yeah,
Timothy Thatcher before, but obviously you're going to be
I have.
facing him. You have.
I
Okay.
have.
Why am I not
Again,
surprised?
yeah, you shouldn't be. It's a very people ask me, they're like, "What's your dream match?" I'm like, "I don't know. I've had all of them."
Yeah.
There's there's certainly some guys left on the list that I'd love to wrestle, but yeah, I've if I started my career with a dream match list, I've probably checked off about 80% of them. But yeah,
That's
there's
sick.
still there's still plenty left on the table and plenty left for me to do, and I'm excited about all of it. I really am. It's great. I can't wait to face Tim again. He
Hmm.
was one of my last indie matches. I wrestled him in
Oh, wow.
the hottest venue, not like crowd wise. The crowd was great, but like physically, temperature wise, it was the hottest venue probably in the history of the world. I've never spoken to anyone who wrestled at that show that didn't say that's the hottest show they've ever been on.
You're not
Uh,
talking about the Queen show, right? There was a like a progress show, like a couple
that's
that.
it.
No, that's. Are you talking about that show
Yep. Progress in Queens. That's it.
in August 2017?
That was me.
That
I,
was. I was at that show. I
I
did not.
you were
I.
at that.
I.
I signed in September of 2017. Yeah,
Yeah, you
like
sound like the following month.
yeah,
That
like
was like Riddle and Gunther or Walter, whatever his name was at the time. Obviously had a match on that show too, I think.
yeah, me and Tim had a match on that
Dude, that's
show.
crazy. When you said that, I'm like, there's no way he's talking about that show. That show, there were people that passed out at that show. Like
I
it was
almost
bad.
passed out. I was near the end of the card. You were probably dying of heat exhaustion by the time I came on. That's probably why
Yeah,
you don't remember the
that's
match.
probably why I don't remember it, to be
I,
honest.
I, I almost never like very rarely in my life do I go like shorter than the time I'm given. That was a night where we were given an amount of time and I was like, we might die if we go that time. Like let's cut
Yeah,
this down because these people do not want to be here for a second longer than they
yeah.
do. And I couldn't breathe at the end of that match. So yeah, that was tough. But looking forward to it again because Tim's an outstanding opponent and I can't wait.
That's awesome, man. Well, we're all looking forward to it as well. I'm looking forward to the match. That match with Casey was great last month or month and a
Mhm.
half ago. So I'm looking forward to you being back at NEW at some point. Just the matches and memories that you've created there. And I mentioned to you this previously, but when you wrestled in Chaotic Wrestling a
Yep.
couple of years ago, we had talked beforehand, I think after the show or something like that. And you had mentioned I was doing a college project about pro wrestling injuries. And you had mentioned, living the double life as a wrestler, wrestling on the weekend and doing like the nursing thing or something along those lines. And
Yeah.
it was when you were in Ring of Honor, and it was really cool. And then you ended up joining NXT about obviously a year and a half later. So I was able
Mhm.
to kind of incorporate that project and use it for other stuff. Saying, listen, I talked to an NXT talent here. That's now in NXT, and it was I never forgot about that. I told you that before, but
Yeah.
I appreciated the time then, and just to see how far you've come since then. It's fucking cool, man. So congrats on everything.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
I'm looking forward to the match on Saturday. Best of luck with everything going forward, dude. I'm sure I'll catch you down the road.
Thank you. Sounds good.